Good day and welcome to Quilting with Don, where I am going to finish Bursting Forth that you see behind me. It's been quilt sewn, it's been quilted. All it needs now is a binding and a method for hanging it, because this is a wall hanger. It will be a wall hanging, and due to its unique shape, it takes a bit of creativity, but I've got some ideas on that. But first, the binding. I'm going to do something I haven't done before, but it looks, I've read the instructions, and it looks very straightforward, and it's called a flange binding. So it's a two-color binding. The main part will be black, and there'll be a thin yellow piping to highlight and add an extra frame layer to this quilt. Because you can see the outer border is black, and what I'm going to do with this flange binding is it's going to show a little bit of yellow and then more black, and black will wrap around. Measuring the length of binding I need to do, it's a little over 30 inches on the side for the hexagon, so you can do math, 30 times 6, 180. I'm going to go for about 220 inches of binding. That's 5 strips with the fabric, standard with the fabric, 43, 44 inches each. There we go. That'll give me my 220-ish inches. And for the flange binding, I'll get into it in a bit, but you have specific widths to cut for each type of strip. Also, for joining the strips together, as usual, I'm going to do the 45-degree seams, so that's all good. One other thing to highlight for my trusted Singer 99K is I bought for it this walking foot. I haven't tried it yet, but it will be used on the flange binding. You may recall that I also ordered a regular 1/4-inch sewing foot for this machine, but I could never get it to work right. I ended up taking advantage of something that Carolyn had in her stash, which is a plastic 1/4-inch sewing foot for doing 1/4-inch seams. And it works great on this 99K. So, that's where we're at. Alright, it doesn't seem like any time at all for you, but it's at least 2 weeks since I last worked on Bursting Forth. It's been a crazy 2 weeks or more, and more, of piping. Our band has been very busy. Actually, 2 bands have been very busy. We did a competition in Victoria with the Mid-Island Competition Pipe Band. Then we played the very next day with Mount Aerosmith Pipe Band in Cumberland for their May Day Festival, Victoria Day Festival. And then just last weekend, we spent an action-packed 4 days in Vernon, British Columbia for the Okanagan Military Tattoo. That was with the Mount Aerosmith Pipe Band. So man, I've been busy, been focusing on playing and learning tunes, and like you wouldn't believe how much time that took up. So the bottom line is, it's a long way of me saying I didn't get to work on Bursting Forth. I'm back at it now. Now I'm going to start doing the binding. So let me show you how this is going to work instead of boring you with watching me cut and sew, because that's straightforward. The flange binding is made up of 2 strips of fabric, so that when they join together you get and I'm going to make it a mostly black binding, but with an 1/8 of an inch yellow strip to add a little bit of extra dimension to it. Just so it's going to go, if you look at the quilt here, you see the black border, then it's going to be, once the binding's on, it's going to be a thin yellow strip, and then it'll finish black and wrap around. That's how it's going to work. So to do that, I'm following this template out of Sewing with Nancy. I've used it before, it's great. I don't think it's available anymore, unfortunately. A few folks have asked, where did I get it? It's actually not a book. It's a kit that comes with a ruler and a book. The ruler is nice to give you dimensions. You can use it. I don't need to use the ruler because I know what widths it wants. And specifically for this binding, the yellow fabric is going to be 1 5/8 inches, and the black fabric is 1 3/8 inches wide. Given the amount of binding I need, it takes 5 width of fabric strips of each color. The other thing is I finally figured out, working with Carolyn, she had a brilliant idea, which is, I wish I thought of it myself, but I gotta give Carolyn credit. For hanging this quilt, I'm gonna do 3 triangular shaped pockets for the top and the top corner and the 2 top side corners. These triangular pockets, I'll show you a little more detail when I get to it, but it's gonna be super simple, and it allows me then to slide in a rigid piece of wood that I will act to keep the quilt centered and spread out. And it'll hang very nicely, I do believe. So that's the plan. Doing the yellow fabric first, I've already trued it up on the left side, so now I'm just going to start cutting 1 5/8 inch strips, which is right there. 1 5/8. I should mention I'm using the same yellow for the flange as I did on the outer yellow border of bursting force. And there's 5 strips of yellow. Do it all again for the black. Alright, so no drama there. I sewed 5 pieces of yellow together, 5 pieces of black using the 90 degree method where you sew on a 45. When you fold them open, you get a nice diagonal seam. Out of the 8 seams I had to do 1 unsew. Just wasn't happy with it. The rest were fine. They were gorgeous. And now I just sew. I've got the good sides to good sides, yellow on the bottom, black on the top, just because it's easier to see them as I'm going along. I got my 1/4 inch presser foot in, and away we go. 200 plus inches of strip to sew together. What could go wrong? I already had to replace the bobbin because I ran out on one of the little seams there. No worries. And away we go. Just keep it feeding it nice and even. Not too fast. This machine doesn't like fast. All right, so now I've pressed my 2 strips together, black and yellow. So this was 1 5/8, 1 3/8. Of course, they've each lost 1/4 inch. You can do the math. So I've gone from an overall 3 inch width to a 2.5 inch width. Once it's folded on itself, it becomes 3/4 of an inch, and that's perfect for binding. So, as you can see, this is the good sides. So here's the fun. What you do now is you fold it over like this, and look at that. There's my little yellow flange that I'm going to have. It's going to look so cute. That's the good side. So then what you're going to do is sew the other side here to the back of the quilt. And then wrap it around and you'll see this nice flange and black binding. It's going to be so cool. So I made the binding, and it's just as advertised. It's yellow on one side, which gets sewn to the back of the quilt, and then the black and yellow. So when it gets wrapped around, you'll see the black with my little yellow flange. That'll be cool. Here's the triangle shape I'm going to make for each corner, right? So to do that and create the finished edge, all I do is instead of the triangle, I'll make it into a diamond with the 120 degree corners on top and bottom and whatever's left on the other corners. I'll fold it on itself and sew the rough edge, the open edge, while I'm sewing the binding. I might even tack it down first and then sew it all through. That will create pockets on top of the back side of the quilt and tucked underneath the binding. That's the theory. Okay, I haven't practiced yet, but I have a theory. What I've done is I decided to make my pockets 2.5 inches at their widest. So I took a 5-inch strip of fabric here and then folded it on itself, right? So theoretically when I cut it, it'll unfold and make my diamond. So now I'm going to cut the triangle. But I want to do 120 degrees. And just like I did before when I was trimming bursting forth, I'm going to do the same thing with this triangle. I'm going to first fold the fabric like this because I want to make a triangle whose top and bottom points are right here and the ends are here. So if I folded this right, that's a 90 degree corner. Then I take the triangle here, do a 90 degree like that. And if my math is right, I cut it right here. And this should give me a diamond. That's a C. Da-da-da! And it does. Check that out. It worked very well. So, I didn't block too much with my hand. So then when I sew it onto the back of the quilt, I'm going to sew it like this, where this represents, let's just say, the very top of the quilt. This will get sewn in. So I'm going to make 2 more of those, and my pockets are ready to go on the quilt. Isn't that cool? I've sewed on the 3 triangles. And here's one of them. Here's the top. You can see it. There it is. I've sewed it to the back using the matching fabric. And of course there's one of the other ones. So the theory is that I'll be able to tuck whatever I build into these triangles to hang the quilt. Alright, ready to rock with sewing the binding on. So I've got the dark side of the unfinished edge of the binding against the right hand side of the backing of the back side of the quilt. That way when it wraps around, the dark side will wrap around to the front and just show a bit of the yellow flange. I'm also using a method that Carolyn has shown me and that I've used to success on the other quilts. I'll give you a link at the top from this guy. It really explains a good way to join the flaps, the ends of your binding. Here. Now I've just turned the first corner, so what it is, flip the tail backwards. Okay, stop roughly a 1/4 inch from the edge. Finish it off with the back stitch. Flip the tail forwards, or well, backwards, and then forward, so now you can see it's in line with the next edge of the quilt. Of course, I rotated the quilt. This should work. I'm just going to start by hand slowly because I just want to make sure that this works. There we go. Update. The quilt is back on the wall because I have sewn on the binding on the back side. I've ironed it to the front. Then I chose the color of thread I'm going to use, and the way the binding is working, I'll show you a close-up. I'm going to use yellow thread. And this is a thicker thread than I was using before, and I learned another lesson. When I put the thread in the machine, it wouldn't work. It turns out that the size of your needle is quite important, and I had a thinner needle previously because I was using this glide thread, nice and thin. Or a fill thread. Okay, I was just corrected. I can't tell one thread from the next. Anyway, the point is this is a cotton thread I'm using now, this yellow thread, and it's thicker. And it must have been getting caught up in the needle eye. It threaded okay, but when it was sewing, it wasn't catching the bobbin. So of course, I checked with my sewing consultant / expert, Carolyn, and she says, put a bigger needle in. So I went back to the standard size needle that this machine normally uses because I had a smaller one before. Tested it, worked great, so ready to sew. Here's the binding as it is. So it's, like I said, I wrapped it around to the front. There's a corner, folded on itself just nicely. You see the yellow flange, and I'm going to use the yellow thread to sew inside the yellow, just on the inside of the black. So the yellow thread will then sew all the way through and finish the binding. Notice anything different besides the obvious? I've had to give up using the 99K sewing machine, as much fun as it's been to use, because it turns out it really doesn't like this King Tut cotton thread I'm using. It's the bobbin. It's too stiff on the bobbin. I played with it quite a bit. It worked for a while, and then it didn't. And then Carolyn came in and had a look at it, and she checked everything herself. Bottom line, the bobbin tension is not good using this King Tut thread. And I could adjust the bobbin tension, but it really works well on this other Aurifil thread I was using for the entire project. I didn't feel like messing with bobbin tension on the 99K, just for the sake of one type of thread. So, for the sake of getting my project done, I've switched back to the trusty Singer Confidence Quilter you see here, which works. That's what I've used on all the other projects. It's got the walking foot on it, and I'm going to continue sewing my binding. I'm about halfway done. I got about half of it done with the other machine, and then it just stopped working well. So here we are. Welcome to my impromptu woodworking garage, woodworking shop. So I kicked the cars out of the garage, and I've set up my table saw and my chop saw. And what I'm going to do now is cut the frame pieces to the sizes I want. I bought this 1x2 inch piece of strapping from a trusty Home Depot in Nanaimo, and the idea is going to be something like this. I'm going to take the right pieces and make an A like this with the right 120-degree angle over the top, and then I'm going to take a third piece to span near the bottom to give it stability. Then I glue them all together. So that's the plan. I'm actually going to cut the pieces shorter first. Gives you less for the table saw. .29 from cut to cut. Going to cut it a little longer. the 120-degree peak, and now I'm going to skim them to the table saw. Now I'm going to test fit these two pieces onto the quilt top, which I've still got upstairs in a clean environment, and determine the length of my cross member and where I'm going to put it. As anticipated, they're just a little long. I made it 29.5. I'm going to go down 1/4 inch on each piece and test fit again. All right, my work here is done. I just ripped this cross member here, and it's the, I'll move back so you can see the whole thing gets the right size. So this will tuck into the A-frame. What you see here is the frame. Bottom rail, top two rails, and I created this little triangular piece to help everything firm up here. So now what I'm going to do is take some wood carpenter's glue. I got some and Carolyn got some. They're probably both very similar. The Gorilla Glue dries clear and apparently is more paintable than this one, so I might just use that. I've glued this and taped that all up, so it's effectively the same as clamping, I'm hoping. And again, the way this is designed, this part should not be under stress, particularly with the brace here. I'm going to let this set for 20 minutes, half an hour per the instructions, and then I will glue and tape this bottom brace here like this, but I just want to make sure I don't put stress on here while it's gluing. Alright, so here's the moment of truth. You can see I've got the frame here, all glued. It's firm. Sure, the glue can cure a bit more, but it's movable, it's good to try it. And you can see the quilt top. So all I have to do theoretically, and of course I've already tested this so I know this works, is tuck the two flaps into the corner pockets and then just slide it up into the top pocket. Like that. Look at that. I have the quilt on its hanger, and now I put a hook on the quilt wall just so you can see how easily this is going to hang on a regular wall. Check it out. Da, 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 da. It just hangs on the crossbar, and voila, just like that. Of course, you stick it left and right to get it to be horizontal. And there it is. I'll stand back. There it is. Bursting forth in all its quilted glory with its own custom-made hanger. Isn't that cool? So you know me, I can't let you go away without discovering what I'm going to drink today to toast the quilt. I got band practice tonight, so I can't go overboard here. But what I'm going to be drinking today, it's a tequila from Cenote, and it's an añejo. Añejo? Yeah. So it's a raw aged tequila. It's got a cool bottle with a metal top. And I'm drinking it in a proper Rydell tequila glass, which we acquired. We learned about these glasses when we did a tequila tasting experience in Cancun. I have band practice, so I'm not going to have too much tequila. But there we have it. So, hope you've enjoyed this making of Quilting with Dawn 2024 and the production of this excellent, most excellent bursting forth pattern with a few Dawn twists, including the yellow borders, the piping, and the custom framed hanger. Awesome. So, remember, public service announcement, don't drink and sew. But hey, enjoy your quilting experiences. I certainly have enjoyed doing this. And cheers. This is a wonderful sipping tequila. Anyway, cheers.